everybody. Well, this is different, isn't it? I am coming to you this week from my home. Unfortunately, we have had a positive COVID case in our family, so we are quarantining together, and I'll be honest, we are lucky. We are all feeling really, really good with very little symptoms, but we would all welcome your positive thoughts and your prayers anyway as we move through these next couple of weeks of quarantining together. And this quarantine thing, I'll be honest, it's really strange, right? It's strange videoing this from my home. We are here in the boundaries of our house trying to keep other people safe and trying to actually keep the virus just inside right here among us. And there are 5 of us here, me and my husband and 3 of our kids, and we are trying to live and do work and do school and exercise and make daily doses and keep up our friendships. The boundaries of our house and respecting those boundaries that are for people that are out there in our community. We want to make sure that our community thrives by us kind of keeping things in here today. And having boundaries also in the house as we live together, so that we can get along during this time is really just as important. As you all know, being cooped up with other people for an extended period of time, if boundaries aren't easily there, this could become a house of incredible tension. This week we are talking about boundaries, and we're using a book by Henry Cloud and John Townsend with that same title, Boundaries, to frame our conversation. Boundaries, like the walls of my house, these are good things, but sometimes, so very often, we focus so much on being loving and giving that we actually forget our boundaries. We actually forget our own limits. And I am just as guilty of this as the next person. See, sometimes we don't realize that boundaries don't just keep us in, boundaries give us freedom. In the book, Cloud and Townsend, they outline these 10 laws of boundaries using biblical principles, and I thought I would share a couple of them with you just briefly today. One that they suggest is from the Bible. They suggest that a law of boundary is you reap what you sow. And this is right from Galatians chapter 6. Oftentimes we think that we are being loving to other people by helping them out. Here's a good example. My son Chase was notorious for forgetting important school items. We would call him the absent-minded professor as he was growing up because he'd think these really deep thoughts about things, but then forget to put his socks on before he went to school. And so he was always forgetting stuff. He was forgetting his boots when it was snowy outside, and he was forgetting his homework, and he'd forget his lunch, and he just was always doing this. And I thought for a while in his early elementary years, I thought that I was being a good and loving mom by going to rescue him, by going to help him out, by bringing his boots to school or his lunch to school or his band instrument to school, all of those things. But then they just kept happening more and more, like once or twice a week. So I decided it was time for me to put in a boundary. And one day I sat down with my boy Chase and I said, "Hey buddy, I love you, and this has gotten kind of out of control, this amount of forgetting stuff. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you 2 passes in which I will bring you what you have forgotten. Because I get it, sometimes I forget my own stuff too, but that is all I'm going to do, just 2 times, buddy." So the first week of school went by, and I noticed one day when he walked out one morning without his snow boots. And I knew that because he didn't have his snow boots, he wouldn't be allowed to play on the playground at recess like he normally would. And they would have required him to just stay over on the blacktop. And I kept quiet, and I sort of gritted my teeth as he went and walked to school that day. And after he came home from school, I didn't get a single phone call that whole day. And he came home from school, and I said, "Okay, how was school today, buddy?" And he said, "Well, I forgot my boots, so I couldn't play on the playground today. And I didn't want to call you because I wondered that what if next week I forget my homework? So I better put my boots in my backpack right now so I don't forget them tomorrow." And I was so proud, and because it didn't take me nagging him. I just let him have the consequences of his own actions. And guess what? Because of this boundary that I put in, our relationship got better. I'll be honest, as a mom and as a giver, it was hard watching him walk out the door with no boots and sometimes no lunch, but we both grew from this experience. And friends, I know it's easier to be talking about this when people are kids and they're young and the consequences seem really small. And I know that it is much harder when the people that you love are adults and the consequences seem so much bigger. But when we love others enough to allow others to have the freedom of living their own life and the freedom of experiencing their own consequences, it enables actually both of us to be able to live more fully into our lives. Another law of boundaries is the law of motivation. And this one, it really speaks to me a lot. Here's an example. Let's say I go to my husband, Ryan, and I say, you never bring me flowers. And the next day he shows up at home with a whole bouquet of flowers. What happens then? Well, let's be honest. I will look at him and then say, well, you only brought me flowers because I asked you to bring me flowers. Right? I mean, it's pretty true. The motivation was because I was making him feel guilty with that first statement. Oftentimes in church and in Christianity, we kind of feel a little bit like this, don't we? We're taught that it's better to give than to receive. And I know that so many of you are givers. You give and you give and you give to the people in your life. But then all of a sudden one day you find yourself just totally wildly unappreciated from all of the giving. What has happened in this circumstance is that the motivation has changed. The motivation has moved from an act of love to an act of fear. An act of love, like, here are some flowers, to an act of fear, oh, well, what will happen if I don't bring you flowers? Maybe originally you started volunteering for a project because you felt called to it and it was bringing you so much cheer and joy and you enjoyed doing it and it was an act of love. But then at some point it seemed like no one would do it unless you did it. And now that volunteering became an act of obligation. You see, our motivation in giving is really important. Does it come from love or does it come from fear? Friends, I want people to give to me not because they feel obligated to. And I think that God does that too. It's true that it is better to give than receive, but if giving isn't leading you to cheer and to joy, then it's probably time for you to put up a boundary. Well, if you want to check out the other laws of boundaries from this book, I would really want to encourage you to check it out. You can find it in the link on our website at www.calvaryalex.org or on the link on Facebook. And if you know somebody who could use this message today, somebody who's struggling in a world with their boundaries, would you do me a favor? Would you go ahead and share this with them? Maybe consider tagging them in the post. And if you're someone who's joining us on Facebook, would you share this? And then if you're on YouTube, would you go ahead and hit subscribe? If you're joining us on cable access, we'll see you again tomorrow. We're so glad that you are here.
Heaven thundered and the world was born. Life begins and ends in the dust you form. Faith commanded and the mountains moved. Fear is losing ground to our hope in you. 1, 2, 3, 4. Unstoppable God, let your glory go on and on. Impossible things in your name, they shall be done. Oh, freedom conquered, all our chains undone. Sin defeated, Jesus is overcome. Mercy triumphed when the third day dawned. Darkness was denied when the stone was gone. 1, 2, 3, 4. Unstoppable God, let your glory go on and on. Impossible things in your name, they shall be done. Oh, unstoppable God, let your glory go on and on. Impossible things in your name, they shall be done. Oh, nothing shall be impossible Nothing shall be impossible. Your kingdom reigns unstoppable. We'll shout your praise forevermore. Jesus, our God, unstoppable. Nothing shall be impossible. Your kingdom reigns unstoppable. We'll shout your praise forevermore. Jesus,